So I'll be the first person to get expelled from Congress without a conviction or without committing treason. And it sets dangerous new precedent for the future to come. It's the demise of this body eventually.
But what about other members of Congress accused of crimes? Senator John Fetterman thinks Democrats will look like hypocrites if they don't boot out his fellow colleague, indicted New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez.
We have a colleague in the Senate that actually did much more sinister and serious kinds of things. Senator Menendez, he needs to go. And if you are going to expel Santos, how can you allow to somebody like Menendez to remain in the Senate? And, you know, Santos's kind of lies were almost, you know, funny. And like, you know, he, you know, landed on the moon and that kind of stuff. Whereas, you know, I think, you know, Menendez, I think, is really a senator for Egypt, you know, not New Jersey.
I mean, what is happening in the world?
Well, I got to tell you, at least Fetterman's putting some sentences together. That's a good thing.
The whole body double thing may have happened. That was a coherent, smart answer.
We agree.
From John Fetterman.
I mean, as a Harvard-educated senator, you guys be
Hey,
careful.
no, and for real, it sounds like he's getting better, and good for him. He's getting his ability to speak
we're
back.
complimenting a Democrat, okay? When's the last time you complimented a Republican?
In the last segment.
All right, so, you know, I'll go to you, Will, since you started. All right, Santos hasn't been convicted of a crime.
Right.
What are we doing here?
All right, guys, so we got to do a follow-up video on the video that I did yesterday about George Santos being expelled from Congress. Now, the Republicans voted along with Democrats to expel George Santos from Congress for misuse of campaign funds, lying to voters about his resume, and lying to Congress during an ethics investigation. Now, George Santos is facing federal charges for his actions. However, he has not been found guilty of anything yet. Now, that's not to say that George Santos is a good guy. That's not to say that he's probably not guilty. I mean, he probably is. I mean, if I had to guess, I would say that more likely than not, he probably is guilty of some of the allegations against him. But again, these are allegations, okay? He has not been found guilty of anything yet. But despite this, Republicans voted along with Democrats to set a new precedent that I believe will only be used against Republicans, which is to expel members of Congress over allegations, not actual convictions. And again, this is a precedent that I believe will only be used against the GOP, and they essentially voted for their own destruction. Now, one of the reasons why I am following up on that video is because I read you guys' comments, and a lot of you guys disagreed with me, which is a good thing, right? I love when you guys disagree with me in the comment section, because that means that you are critically thinking about the things that I say. That means that you're not just going along with everything that I say. You shouldn't go along with everything that I say. You're challenging me on my thoughts, and you're challenging yourself, which is kind of the point of what I do. Okay, so I want to expand on this topic because John Fetterman, who is a Democrat senator, went on The View to call out Democrats and their hypocrisy around expelling George Santos from Congress, but yet Democrats like Bob Menendez, who's currently under federal investigation for influence peddling, he is not being expelled, or he hasn't been expelled yet. And there doesn't seem to be the same push to expel him as there was to expel George Santos. And he's going to say this on live television in front of the cackling hens on The View. And I want to play this clip because it truly is remarkable to see a Democrat calling out the Democrats on their hypocrisy. Lord knows there's so much hypocrisy from Democrats that it is kind of a sigh of relief to see a Democrat actually call it out. So I want to talk about this, but before we get into it, we have to have a word from the sponsor of this video, Night Watch Pro. Night vision binoculars are the coolest pieces of tech that anybody can have, but until recently, they've just been too expensive for the average Joe. Luckily, newer models have caused prices to come way down. If you enjoy fishing, hunting, spotting wildlife, or you just want to keep an eye out for potential intruders or young scholars or criminals after dark, you'll find a good pair of night vision binoculars very useful. This is why myself and tens of thousands of others are getting Night Watch Pros. Night Watch Pros affordably allow anyone to see with predator-like vision in pitch darkness. They're highly effective for watching wildlife, scenic viewing, surveillance, patrol detection, home protection, and much more. Plus, they include high-end night vision features such as 4K video recording, a clear HD display, 5x zoom, anti-shake technology, and a long-lasting rechargeable battery. Tens of thousands of 5-star reviews back up the idea that Night Vision Pros are the best choice for night vision binoculars on the market. So this holiday season, give the gift of protection to your loved ones. Place your order for the Night Watch Pro and you'll receive exclusive access to the Prepper's Peak newsletter, free express shipping, and last but not least, a 100% lifetime guarantee replacement. Simply click on the link in the description and go to nightwatchpro.com and use promo code HOLIDAY to get 25% off and take advantage of this limited time deal before they sell out.
And you've also been calling to get rid of Menendez, I know. But first, before we talk about that, what's your reaction to the expulsion?
Well, it's like I'm not surprised, but to me, I think the more important picture is that we have a colleague in the Senate that actually did much more sinister and serious kinds of things. Senator Menendez, he needs to go. And if you are going to expel Santos, how can you allow to somebody like Menendez to remain in the Senate? And, you know, Santos's kind of lies were almost, you know, funny. And like, you know, he landed on the moon and that kind of stuff. Whereas, I think, Menendez, I think, is really a senator for Egypt, not New Jersey. So I really think he needs to go. And especially, it's kind of strange that if Santos is not allowed to remain in the House, someone like that. Yeah.
Are you, though, uncomfortable with the fact that there hasn't been an adjudication, that while he's been charged, there hasn't been a conviction?
Menendez.
With Menendez.
I am. And it's like he has the right for his day in court and all that, but he doesn't have the right to have those kind of votes and things that's not a right. And I think we need to make that kind of decision to send him out.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that. Now, shout out to John Fetterman, right? All jokes aside, okay? I know we give John Fetterman a hard time, but I'm legitimately happy to see that he is recovering, okay? He is completing his sentences. He's making sense. It seems like he's coherent. And I am glad, I am happy to see that he is recovering, regardless of the differences in politics. Like, for example, this guy believes in abortion up until birth, probably after birth as well, too. But regardless of our differences in politics, I think that it is important that we do have a competent and coherent senator in that seat, okay? And it seems like he's recovering well, and I'm legitimately happy to see it, because even somebody like him can see the hypocrisy of the Democrats when it comes to this issue of expelling members for Congress over allegations and not convictions, because he's 100% right about Bob Menendez in the sense that if you're expelling people over allegations, Bob Menendez was accused of influence peddling. He's, like John Fetterman said, he's basically a senator for Egypt rather than New Jersey. And he's also under federal investigation for it. He's been charged. I mean, we've went through this before. We've seen the evidence. I mean, this guy, there's a mountain of evidence against him, okay? He was accused of doing stuff like this before in the past, okay? And he luckily got away with it. If this is the type of precedent that we're setting, then you got to expel the Democrats as well, too, right? Because I think that what Bob Menendez did is worse than what George Santos was accused of. Now, George Santos was accused of basically being a fake person, right? I mean, he said he had all the infinity stones of wokeness, and he used that in a Long Island district that, apparently helps, right? It apparently helps. That's like the only way that a Republican can win, right? For, them to have the infinity stones of wokeness, okay? And he took advantage of that and he won. Now, again, I think personally that, it should be for the voters to decide whether or not George Santos should stay in Congress. And I also think this should be for the voters to decide whether or not Bob Menendez should stay in Congress. And I think that's where I disagree with John Fetterman, because John Fetterman is operating in a less than ideal world, even though I think that he is consistent on the principles that if you're going to expel George Santos, then you have to expel Bob Menendez. The reason why I disagree with him is because I think in the ideal world, we actually don't expel any members of Congress over allegations. And right now we live in a world where this is only being used against Republicans and is never used against Democrats. This is why I gave the Republicans a hard time for doing this, because we have no proof and evidence that Republicans taking the high road actually helps Republicans in regards to votes. Okay, what's going to happen is that district, George Santos's district, is going to have a special election, and Democrats are already pouring millions of dollars into that district race in order to flip that seat, a seat that has historically been a Democrat seat. It got flipped during the midterms, and most likely is going to be flipped back blue. So I believe that Republicans basically are giving the Democrats a seat, and they're not gaining anything from it, right? They don't gain anything from it, because it's not like people are going to go out and vote and say, oh, well, you know, Republicans voted to expel George Santos. We're going to replace him with another Republican. Now, again, I could be wrong. If voters do go out and they vote and they say, oh, well, we're going to replace George Santos with another Republican, then I'm wrong, right? Maybe, just maybe, voters will think about the fact that Republicans did the right thing and that they were above the fray, and that they will replace George Santos with another Republican, and therefore it will be a wash, right? Republicans will win because they got rid of a bad apple and they still kept the seat. However, I don't think that's going to happen, guys. There's no proof and evidence that the Democrats taking the low road actually hurts them, right? I mean, they've done this stuff before. They have essentially taken away Marjorie Taylor Greene's committee assignments over her speech, over things that she said before she got into Congress, okay? They have been persecuting the former president of the United States over his free speech. They're currently going after him, and there's no evidence that that actually hurts the Democrats, at least not when it comes to voting. Yeah, I mean, we'll see in 2024. You know, it seems like right now these political persecutions of Trump are actually helping Trump in the polls, but we'll see when it comes time to actually vote. If I had to guess, I would say that that district that George Santos is in is going to be flipped blue, because the RNC has proven to be incompetent, ran by Ronald McDaniels. So who am I to say that this actually helps the GOP, right? This actually will benefit the GOP to say, well, we're above the Democrats, okay? We're actually principled. We're above the fray. We're better than the Democrats. If that district flips blue, which I believe that it will, then again, what do Republicans gain? You lost a seat. You have less control over Congress, and you gain nothing. Voters did not care. Voters did not reward you for it, okay? And that's why I just think that this was the wrong move, because Democrats never face the consequences of the precedents that they set. It's only Republicans. So now you've set a precedent that you can expel members of Congress over allegations, not actual convictions. You know, this is what they're doing. This is what they try to do with Trump, right? This is what they've tried to do with other members of the GOP Congress. And it never affects Democrats. Jamal Bowman, there's not even going to be a vote to censure him. The Ethics Committee declined to investigate a guy who clearly lied to Capitol Police. He pleaded guilty to his misdemeanor charges. We saw on video that his initial story about why he pulled a fire alarm was a lie. He was doing it to try to disrupt an official proceeding in Congress in which Democrats set the precedent that this is an act of insurrection, and Republicans did not make Democrats pay for it. He's not even going to get censured. They're not going to bring up a vote to expel him. They declined to even continue to investigate him. So again, this is what frustrates me so much about Republicans, and this is why I just simply disagree with people in the comment section saying, well, you know, George Santos is a bad guy. Republicans did the right thing by getting rid of him. And I'm like, okay, well, they may have done the right thing morally, but really, is it the right thing morally when he hasn't been convicted of anything, right? These are just accusations. Now, again, that's not to say that I don't think that George Santos is most likely a bad apple. He's most likely a liar. He most likely used campaign funds for his own personal expenses, you know, and all the other things he's accused of. He probably did. But again, that's why we have elections. That's why it's up to the voters to decide. And Democrats are going to openly be hypocritical, and they're not going to go after, Jamal Bowman. They're not going to expel Bob Menendez. They're not going to do any of that. Did you hear Sonny Holston when John Fetterman suggested kicking out Bob Menendez? Well, do you think that, you should do this even though, this hasn't been adjudicated yet? Again, she's not giving that same benefit of the doubt to George Santos. You should be asking the same question about George Santos. But again, they reflexively ask that question about Democrats because when it comes to Democrats, oh no, you actually need to be convicted, right? Allegations are not enough. But when it comes to the Republicans, allegations are enough to kick out a Republican. You actually need convictions to kick out Democrats. And even if they do get a conviction, will Democrats actually move to remove their own? Doubt it. And again, that's why I'm so frustrated by this. This is why I say that the GOP is weak. We live in a time, unfortunately, where you don't gain anything by taking the high road, right? If voters don't care, why should the politicians care? I'm so serious because the only thing you're doing is you're just destroying your own party. In the ideal world, we would not have congressmen being kicked out over allegations, right? But the next ideal world after that, okay, if we are kicking out congressmen over allegations, is if it happens to both sides equally, okay? But that's not what's happening. It's only affecting one side, and Republicans are literally signing up to destroy their own party, to say, well, we're above the Democrats, and they don't gain anything from it. They gain absolutely nothing from it. They lose power. It's almost as if they don't care if Democrats win, right? They don't give a damn, which I really am convinced that's the case, because if Republicans actually start giving Democrats a taste of their own medicine, this would stop. Democrats wouldn't do it because they would think twice and say, well, if we do this to them, then they're going to do it to us. It's called mutually assured destruction. There's a reason why, despite the fact that, the United States wants to invade North Korea, clearly they want to invade North Korea, clearly they want to invade Iran. The reason why they don't is because basically we know that North Korea has nukes and there's a chance that Iran has nukes, right? So therefore, if you invade another nuclear nation and you start a nuclear war, even considering the fact that the United States has way more nukes than North Korea and Iran, that still guarantees that there are going to be significant casualties, because that's what happens when you use nukes. Okay, so that's why the United States does not, topple Kim Jong-un or doesn't invade Iran or go into Pakistan. The reason why is because they have nukes. That's the reason why these countries want nukes, and they try to get nukes so bad because it makes you invasion proof, right? It makes you invasion proof from the United States. Okay, again, this is a concept called mutually assured destruction. Same thing applies in Congress. Democrats use nukes against Republicans, and Republicans really don't even respond. They don't do the same thing, even though clearly you have situations like Bob Menendez that's worse than George Santos. I mean, this guy, again, is selling out his own people for another country. He's a traitor, straight up. He's a traitor to this country. And he's still sitting in Congress. They should have voted to expel Bob Menendez before they voted to expel George Santos. But again, Republicans went right along with the Democrats, setting a precedent that will only be used against them, and it won't be used against Democrats. Again, I could be wrong. Maybe Democrats will vote to expel Bob Menendez. Maybe Republicans eventually will go after Jamal Bowman, but I doubt it. They can't even impeach Joe Biden, right? And there's a ton of evidence for Joe Biden's influence peddling, but again, they're struggling to move forward with impeachment. So again, it's one thing if Republicans were doing it back to Democrats and then Republicans did it to their own, just like they're doing it to Democrats. I would say, okay, yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, Republicans, because of the allegations against George Santos and the overwhelming evidence that these allegations are probably true, it probably is a good thing for Republicans to take the high road and to expel George Santos and get rid of him, because they're getting rid of Democrats too. They're just getting rid of the corruption, but they're getting rid of corruption on their own side and not doing it to the other side, right? That's what I have a problem with. If you're going to do it to your side, you need to do it to the other side too, but that's not what's happening, right? That's not what's happening at all, considering the history that we have of Republicans being weak. And that's the problem with Republicans. They love playing go along to get along gang. They want to sit here and act like they have the moral high ground over Democrats, and it does not benefit them. It's not even like the mainstream liberal media is going to come out here and say, oh, well, Democrats need to go and expel Bob Menendez, right? Since they expelled George Santos. No. They're not even going to push the Democrats on that. They're not going to do it. It's not like they're losing any votes. They're not losing no votes. So there's no real pressure for Democrats to do it. So therefore, they're not. So again, what you have is a precedent that will only be used against Republicans, never against Democrats, and Republicans signed up for it. And you're probably going to have a district that gets flipped back blue, and Republicans will lose a seat, and ultimately they will lose and gain nothing from this. But hey, they have the moral high ground, right? They stood on their principles. And again, what did you gain from it? Not a damn thing. If anything, you lost. So hey, let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.